So my wife and I, we get around to these things, and that guy, the one with the hat, what's his name? Doyle Turner. Well, Harrison Ford has this old beat up fedora, and he just pretends. But we got a guy with a Stetson. He's not pretending. Okay, he's an economist, a banker, and a landowner, and I'm always pleased to hear what he has to say. He always has something to advance our knowledge in this arena. Here's Doyle.
So I come from over by Sioux City, and of course we're right next to South Dakota. And for most of my adult life, I've been trying to figure out how to get the Big Sioux River to go down the Little Sioux Channel so I could be part of South Dakota. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight that something happened this last week that we have never probably seen in most of our lifetimes. The stalwart state of South Dakota caved. The legislature in South Dakota caved to the big money interest, straight up corruption, and to add insult to injury, the bills that they passed that stripped the rights of the counties to protect their citizens, they literally called them the Landowner's Bill of Rights. But we have something good to say. I just read an article not too long ago that this session here in Iowa has been unimpressive. And that's true. Not a whole lot has gotten done if you look at it from one way. But there's another thing that isn't being told, and that's that unlike South Dakota, our legislatures did stand up. We had bills that were very similar to what South Dakota passed. We had a lot of really ugly, nasty bills that were entered by our leadership. And we had a small group of patriot representatives and senators who stood up and killed those bills. Some of them are here, and some of them you'll get a chance to talk to, but I'm here to tell you we need to be really thankful, especially some of these don't have a lot of experience. They don't have a lot of years in, and some are more seasoned, but they've really stood up to the challenge, and they have done it with a level of skill beyond some of their years of experience, and it's really something to be proud of. There are people down there working for you. Leadership is not, in general. I can't say that on all of them. So lately, I have been, our Free Soil Foundation hired a lobbyist, and I have been going to the Capitol 2 to 3 days a week and working with our lobbyist and trying to get a bill passed that would at least make this process more fair. It would bring the elephant in the room into a courtroom before the IUB can decide anything else. There are people, landowners, that have been paying attorney fees for a long time. It's already added up to a lot of money, and they haven't hit the expensive part yet. The expensive part's yet to come. And their land is encumbered, and it's really a violation of their Fifth Amendment rights already because they haven't been compensated for anything, yet their land is already encumbered by the threat of eminent domain. That's another thing I'd like to tell you. Do not be afraid of eminent domain. I've seen people who have gone through it. I've never heard anybody say, I didn't get the money I deserved. There were always other issues they may have had, but it wasn't the money. You will get fairly compensated. But the other thing you need to know is that when those land agents come out and start pressing you and using eminent domain as a threat, we need to hear about it. We need to document it. Because a voluntary easement is not a voluntary easement unless it's truly voluntary, and it's not voluntary if it's done under threat. I'm not real tall, but this thing thinks I'm even shorter. So that's what we need to do. whatever things you think these people are doing that ticks you off, is offensive, you think might be illegal, we need to hear about it. We need to document it. Because those are the types of things that we can take to the IUB meetings, and those are the types of things that we can use in a courtroom. So I'll give you a little bit of background on me. When I was in my mid-20s, I went to work for the 17th largest bank in the country, and I was making cattle loans. My first loan was a $3 million loan. I got up to where I was working in the range of $30 million. I was having fun. I was selling money. Doesn't get any better than that. People like to see people who want to give them money. Well, that all came to an end when we got a phone call from the bank that owned us out of Milwaukee that a customer they had was kiting. The long story short, the bank lost $22 million on a $3 million loan. They had started an investor program with him, had pulled in 77 investors that had $26 million worth of cattle that he had given them a guaranteed return on. And the bank had done this in an effort to consider these cattle these investors as unsecured creditors, and they were going to use their cattle in the bankruptcy to make themselves whole. I don't like being in meetings where people get to decide who gets other people's assets. I found documentation that proved that they knew he was kiting beforehand, and they only shut it down when the deposit side of the bank figured it out. They actually had a flow chart in the loan write-up that actually showed the flow of the money. So I took that information to the agent for the investors and told them to go sue them. 2 RICO cases came out of them. One of them was a class action lawsuit. We sued the bank and we won. So, of course, my oldest son was born on a Monday. I got fired on a Wednesday. You know, and it's really not fun getting from a job that you really enjoyed. But I tell you this because I'm used to being in that David and Goliath deal. Everybody got sued in that deal. I switched sides. I was the only one that didn't get sued. I've learned a lot about legal things. My kids, I have 5 kids, and they'll say, "Dad, everybody comes to you for legal advice, but you're not a lawyer." I go, "Well, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience in the legal realm." That does help with these types of things. But here's the deal. Summit is a very large company, and they've got deep pockets. But we have a really good case in court. When I found out that these CO2 pipelines were coming through, at first I thought, no big deal. We have pipelines all over the place. And then I found out this isn't our grandfather's pipeline. 2100 PSI on something that isn't going to go straight up, it's going to go out. And, you know, we had that really cold weather. Engineer in North Dakota said it could take weeks at 30 below for that to dissipate. And that colorless, clear plume could travel around through the low areas, and according to what we have from Summit, they don't have the ability to tell us where it would be. That is something that we need to demand, is a 3D plume study, and it needs to be on demand 24/7 every day, so that if there is a rupture, our first responders at least know where it's going to be. Going forward, I think we have to consider that there's going to be good days and bad days. I promise you, as Navigator got depressed in this, I promise you Summit isn't feeling overly confident, because as of today, they have not received one single permit. And that's something we need to remember. So I had an investment years ago, that little company that was selling CO2, and they were making a lot of money doing it. So I knew that CO2 was worth a lot of money. So I searched out companies that would take our CO2. What I learned is that the CO2 coming off of the biological process in our ethanol plants is actually 98% pure. Industry standard for CO2 is 10 to 12%. Folks, the subsidy that the government is giving is a lot of money, but the CO2 that these companies are taking for nothing is worth billions. So I found two companies, Carbon Sink LLC and Cap CO2, and they are willing to build a methanol plant at each ethanol plant in our state that would take the CO2, add it to hydrogen, and make methanol. This will create two routes of income for the ethanol plant. They will actually get paid for their CO2 rather than give it away. And they will get management fees because they will hire the ethanol plant to manage their plant. This also, the big thing with the ethanol plants is they need to lower their carbon index for this phony game that we're playing now with carbons. This will lower their carbon index just like the pipeline does. So when they tell you that the pipeline is necessary or ethanol is going to die, that has always been a lie. It's still a lie. Navigator actually admitted to one of our county board of supervisors that all of this CO2 will eventually be made into methanol. The only purpose for this pipeline is to transfer ownership from the ethanol plants, especially these smaller, locally owned ethanol plants, to the pipeline company. This is nothing more than robber barons taking assets out of our state to add value to them, and we are going to get nothing. I better let this, but I keep going, but I'm going to stop here. I appreciate all of you coming out because we need to join together. We are at the point where this thing's going to cost a lot of money. You know, we're at where we need to start going to court and we need to start doing things. We already have a lobbyist. So we need to bind together, but we also need money in order to do it. Thank you.